As she lay in the hospital bed connected to monitors, Sarah noticed something disturbing. Thin red scratches were appearing on Emma's arms, as if something was clawing at her from the inside.
Undead City. The night comes alive. Believe it or don't. It's entirely your choice.
Yes, believe it or not, the choice is yours. Are you ready to listen? So, sit back, if you dare, and listen closely.
They closed Rose Hill Sanatorium in 1964 after 23 patients died in a single night. The official report blamed a faulty heating system, but the Night Nurse's Journal, found decades later, tells a different story. She wrote about patients speaking in unison, about shadows that moved against the light, and about room 217, where no patient ever spent more than 3 nights before begging to be moved or going silent forever. The asylum has stood abandoned for 60 years. The locals won't go near it, and anyone who breaks in never comes out quite the same. Rose Hill Sanatorium sits on 50 acres of overgrown land just outside of Millfield, Pennsylvania. From a distance, it looks almost elegant, a massive Victorian-style building with high windows and ornate stonework. But get closer and you'll see the decay. Shattered windows like blinded eyes, crumbling walls strangled by ivy, and the rust-colored stains on the exterior stones that locals swear is blood that seeps from inside the building. Constructed in 1901 as a state-of-the-art facility for the treatment of the mentally ill, Rose Hill was initially praised for its humanitarian approach. Dr. Edwin Rosehill, the founder, believed in treating patients with dignity rather than the barbaric methods common in his era. But by the 1930s, the original vision had been corrupted. Overcrowding led to patients sleeping in hallways. Treatments became increasingly experimental and cruel. Ice baths, insulin shock therapy, and early forms of lobotomy. The patient death rate tripled, yet the sanatorium continued to receive funding and new patients. The most notorious section was the East Wing, reserved for what the staff called the hopeless cases. Patients there were rarely seen by doctors. Many were kept in permanent restraints. The sounds from the East Wing were so disturbing that new staff members were advised to stuff cotton in their ears for the first week. Urban explorers who have dared to enter Rose Hill over the years report finding patient records scattered across the floors, descriptions of treatments that would be considered torture by today's standards. One file reportedly detailed the case of Mary Ellison, a 16-year-old girl committed in 1952 for acute melancholia after her parents died. The treatment plan included daily ice water immersion and electroshock therapy 3 times weekly. Her file ends abruptly after 3 months with a single word: unresponsive. The most recent break-in at Rose Hill occurred last year when 3 college students decided to film a documentary about the abandoned asylum. Only 2 returned. The footage they captured shows them exploring the decrepit halls, joking nervously as they pass through the kitchen with its massive, rusted meat hooks still hanging from the ceiling, the communal shower room with inexplicable scratch marks covering the walls, and the former children's ward where tiny handprints can be seen in the dust, appearing fresh each morning despite the building being empty for decades. The missing student, Jake Collins, was last seen on camera entering room 217. His friend's footage shows them calling for him, searching frantically. They claimed they looked away for only seconds, but Jake had vanished. The camera captures a sudden temperature drop, visible in their frosting breath, and a whispered voice that seems to say, "He's staying." Police searched the building for 72 hours. They found Jake's camera in the basement boiler room containing footage none of the authorities would describe to the press. Jake himself was never found. What makes room 217 so significant? Historical records show it was originally designed as a treatment room, not patient housing. Dr. Victor Stein, who ran Rosehill from 1939 to 1951, repurposed it for what he called his special cases. No records exist of what treatments he performed there, but maintenance logs show the room required new floor tiles every 3 months due to persistent staining. Former nurse Gladys Peterson, who worked at Rosehill from 1950 until its closure, gave an interview to the local newspaper in 1985, shortly before her death. She described how patients would change after spending time in the room 217. They'd go in talking, responsive, they'd come out hollow, their eyes would be different, like someone else was looking out through them. Dr. Stein said it was a side effect of the medication, but I never saw any medication being given in that room, just that machine with the cranks and leather straps, and the mirrors. So many mirrors on every wall. When asked why mirrors were installed, Nurse Peterson became agitated. He said they needed to see what was happening, not the patients, them, the ones he was letting in. The events of February 17th, 1964, the night that finally closed Rosehill, remain partially redacted in official records. What we know comes primarily from the journal of night nurse Elaine Cooper, discovered in 2010 during an asbestos assessment of the building. According to Cooper's entries, the trouble began 3 days earlier when a new patient was admitted to room 217. The patient, whose name is blacked out in all official records, was described as unresponsive yet aware. Cooper noted that the patient never spoke or moved without assistance, but their eyes would track movement across the room with unsettling precision. On February 15th, Cooper wrote, "The patients in rooms adjacent to 217 have started speaking in unison. Just nonsense phrases at first, but tonight they were all repeating, 'The door is opening,' for 3 hours straight. Dr. Wallace says it's mass hysteria and has ordered sedation for the entire floor." February 16th. Found Orderly Davis standing outside 217 at 3 a.m. staring at the door. His eyes were bloodshot like he hadn't blinked in hours. When I touched his shoulder, he said, "They're coming through now, so many of them." He has no memory of this in the morning. Her final entry on February 17th reads, "Something is wrong with the shadows in the East Wing. They move a half second after the patients do. Patient in 217 spoke for the first time today. Said only, 'We are grateful for the door you've provided. Tonight, the temperature has dropped so low we can see our breath inside. The shadows are moving on their own now. They're stretching toward room 217 like they're being pulled. God help us.' That night, 23 patients died between midnight and 1 a.m. The official cause was listed as hypothermia due to heating system failure. But the autopsy reports, sealed until 2001, showed no signs consistent with hypothermia. Instead, each victim displayed the same unusual symptoms: eyes fixed open with ruptured blood vessels, expression frozen in terror, and strange bruising around the throat and wrists that one examiner noted resembled handprints, but with too many fingers. Nurse Cooper was found alive, but catatonic, crouched in a corner of the nurses' station. She never spoke again and spent the remaining 30 years of her life in a different institution, where staff reported she would scream in her sleep every night at exactly 12:37 a.m. Rosehill was closed immediately. Patient transfer records indicate that the occupant of room 217 was not among those moved to other facilities. There is no record of what happened to them. In the decades since, Rose Hill has become a magnet for paranormal investigators, urban explorers, and thrill seekers. Those who manage to get inside before being caught by security report these consistent phenomena: sudden cold spots, the sound of squeaking gurney wheels on the upper floors, and most commonly, the sensation of being watched by something hiding just out of sight. Paranormal researcher Diana Martinez spent one night in Rose Hill in 2018 with a full array of equipment. The electromagnetic field detectors showed massive spikes throughout the building, particularly near room 217. Audio recorders picked up what sound like multiple voices whispering in an unidentified language. Most disturbing was the thermal imaging camera footage, which showed human-shaped heat signatures in rooms that were empty. Martinez's team fled the building at 12:37 a.m. when all of their equipment simultaneously malfunctioned, and they heard what Martinez described as the sound of hundreds of people screaming and crying at once, coming from everywhere and nowhere. The most compelling evidence comes from architect Kevin Silva, hired in 2020 to assess whether the building could be renovated for apartments. His survey revealed something impossible. Room 217 is larger on the inside than the outside. By his measurements, the interior dimensions exceed the exterior by approximately 7 feet in each direction. When he brought this discrepancy to the attention of the current property owner, his contract was immediately terminated. Last month, an anonymous former maintenance worker from Rose Hill came forward with a stunning claim. He alleged that beneath room 217 is a sub-basement that doesn't appear on any blueprint. According to him, Dr. Stein had it constructed in 1947 to house the machine. It was like nothing I'd ever seen, the worker described. Big metal rings that rotated around each other, covered in symbols that hurt your eyes if you looked at them too long. The doc called it his window, said he was trying to see into the place where thoughts come from. The worker claimed that on the night of February 17th, 1964, the machine was running at full power for the first time. The doc said he finally had the right kind of mind to make it work. That new patient in 217, way I figure it, the machine didn't open a window, it opened a door, and whatever came through, it's still in there. Developers purchased the Rose Hill property last year, planning to demolish the sanatorium and build luxury homes. Strangely, every piece of demolition equipment brought to the site has experienced mechanical failure. 3 different construction crews have quit, citing unsafe working conditions, without elaborating further. The project manager was found last week wandering the grounds in a confused state, suffering from hypothermia despite the warm weather. At the hospital, he kept repeating the same phrase: Room 217 is waiting for the right mind. It's waiting for you. Most disturbing of all, recent drone footage shows that while the asylum continues to decay, room 217 appears freshly maintained. The window is intact, the exterior stonework unweathered. Sometimes between the hours of midnight and 1 a.m., witnesses report seeing a light moving behind that window, as if someone is walking room to room, carrying a lantern, looking for something or someone. Monitors recorded it all. A janitor working on the 4th floor at 1:23 a.m. Then the camera feed cut out for exactly 6 seconds. When it came back, the janitor was gone. His cleaning cart still there, mop handle still swinging slightly. No exits on the camera feed, no windows open, just gone. I've been working security at Meridian Tower for 5 nights now, and tonight I finally discovered where people go when the cameras blink. I should have paid more attention to the warning scribbled inside my locker. Don't watch the monitors too long. Meridian Tower stands in the business district, a 40-story glass monolith built 10 years ago. During the day, thousands of people fill its offices, executives, administrative staff, IT workers, cleaning crews. But at night, the building transforms, empty hallways stretch into darkness, the hum of the ventilation system echoes through vacant floors, and the security desk, with its wall of monitors, becomes the only sign of life. The job seemed perfect to Dylan Reed. $22 an hour to sit at a desk and watch cameras. No college degree required, just a clean record and willingness to work nights. The head of security, Mercer, barely looked at Dylan's resume before hiring him. "We've been short-staffed," Mercer explained. "Had 3 night guards quit in the last month. No notice." Dylan didn't think much of it. Security jobs had high turnover. The hours were rough. The training was minimal. How to use the key card system, which executives could access which floors, the patrol schedule. "Most important rule," Mercer said, handing Dylan the security manual. "If you see anything unusual on the monitors, radio me. Don't investigate alone." Dylan nodded, thinking it was standard procedure. "And don't stare at any monitor for too long," Mercer added. "Bad for your eyes. Switch views every few minutes." It wasn't until Dylan found the tally mark scratched inside his locker that he realized this wasn't a normal security precaution. 7 sets of marks. Each set crossed through 7 guards before him. Beneath them, a scrawled warning: "Don't watch the monitors too long. They're watching back." Dylan's first few nights were quiet. The routine was simple, hourly. Patrols of the main floor, monitor checks, log entries for the few employees working late. By his 3rd night, Dylan had settled into a rhythm. The building was predictable. The same cleaning crew at the same times, the same late working executives catching the same midnight elevators, until 1:23 a.m. on his 4th night. That's when he first saw it happen. The janitor, Manuel, was cleaning the 4th floor hallway. Dylan had seen him dozens of times on previous shifts. Always on the 4th floor at this time. On the monitor, Manuel pushed his cart past the camera. Standard procedure. Then the feed stuttered. Static filled the screen for exactly 6 seconds. When the image cleared, Manuel was gone. His cart sat unattended in the middle of the hallway, the mop handle still swinging slightly, as if just released. Dylan checked the adjacent camera feeds. No sign of Manuel in the stairwells. The elevator hadn't moved. There was nowhere he could have gone in 6 seconds. Dylan grabbed his radio to call Mercer, then hesitated. This had to be a glitch, a jump in the feed. Manuel had simply walked out of frame during the static, but deep down, Dylan knew that wasn't true. He'd been watching the monitors long enough to know something was wrong. He ran the footage back, watched it again, and noticed something he'd missed the first time. Just before the static, a shadow moved across the wall. Not Manuel's shadow, something else. Something that shouldn't have been there. And in the frame after the static, for just a split second, the camera angle seemed different, as if someone had tilted it slightly, then put it back. Dylan's radio crackled to life, making him jump. "Everything okay down there?" Mercer's voice concerned. "Yeah," Dylan lied, "all quiet." "Good. Remember what I said about the monitors? Keep cycling the feeds." Dylan nodded to himself and began clicking through the cameras more frequently. By his 5th night, Dylan had identified the pattern. It always happened at 1:23 a.m., always on a different floor, always when someone was alone. The static always lasted exactly 6 seconds, and when it cleared, the person was gone. Dylan searched the building's employment records. In the past year, 14 employees had resigned without notice. All night workers, all after being recorded on that final shift. He cross-referenced the dates with security footage. Each disappearance had occurred at 1:23 a.m. Tonight would be his 5th night, and Dylan was determined to understand what was happening. At midnight, he began preparing. He set up his phone to record the security monitors. He made sure his radio was fully charged, and he laid out the building's emergency floor plans, studying possible exit routes. At 1:15 a.m., Dylan's heart began racing. He cycled through the camera feeds, wondering who it would be tonight. Floor 17. A programmer working late, typing at his computer. Floor 22, empty. Floor 33, an executive asleep on her office couch. Floor 8, empty. Floor 29, a cleaner vacuuming. 1:22 a.m., Dylan's palms were sweating as he continued cycling through the feeds. Then he found it. Floor 38, a security guard making his rounds. Martinez, another night guard Dylan had never met in person but had seen on the cameras. Their shifts never overlapped. Dylan watched, unable to look away, as Martinez walked down the hallway, checking doors, marking his log. The clock hit 1:23 a.m. Dylan waited for the static, for the 6-second gap, for Martinez to vanish. But nothing happened. The guard continued his patrol, turning the corner out of the camera's view. Dylan exhaled. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe the pattern was broken. Then he realized his mistake. He'd been watching the wrong disappearance. He hadn't been watching Martinez. The monitors had been watching him. Dylan felt it before he saw it, a tingling sensation on the back of his neck, the feeling of being observed. The security desk had no cameras pointed at it. It was the blind spot in the building's surveillance, or at least it was supposed to be, but as Dylan slowly turned in his chair, he saw it, a camera he'd never noticed before. Small, black, mounted in the corner above the monitor wall. It wasn't connected to any system he knew of. The red recording light blinked steadily. On his desk, the security monitors began to change. One by one, they switched to the same image, the security desk, Dylan sitting there, seen from multiple angles, but the angles were impossible. Some showed the back of his head, though there were no cameras behind him. Others showed his face from below, though there were no cameras under the desk. Then came the static, all monitors simultaneously filling with black and white snow. Dylan jumped up, grabbing his radio. "Mercer! Something's happening at the security desk." No response, just crackling static, matching the monitors. The 6-second countdown had begun. Dylan ran for the door, pulled the handle, locked. He swiped his security card. The reader flashed red, access denied. 4 seconds of static left. Dylan grabbed the emergency phone. Dead. 2 seconds left. He turned back to the monitors, watching as the static began to clear. 0. The static vanished. The monitors returned to their normal feeds. Different floors, different angles, but Dylan was still there, still at the security desk. He exhaled shakily. Nothing had happened. Then he noticed the time on the desk clock. 1:29 a.m. 6 minutes had passed, not 6 seconds, and something was different. The air felt heavier, the lights dimmer, the sounds of the building muffled, as if coming from very far away. Dylan looked at the monitors again and froze. He could see himself on every screen, sitting at the security desk, looking at the monitors, but it wasn't him. Not exactly. The uniform was the same, the posture was the same, but the face was wrong, distorted, features blurred and stretched, and it was watching him through the screens. Dylan stumbled away from the desk, his heart pounding. The thing on the monitors mimicked his movements with a half-second delay. He ran to the windows overlooking the city. The skyline was all wrong. Buildings stood where there should be none. Lights blinked in impossible patterns. And the stars. Too many stars in constellations he'd never seen. This wasn't his world anymore. A noise behind him. The elevator dinged, doors sliding open. Dylan turned, expecting the worst. But the elevator was empty. No, not empty. As he approached, he saw that the elevator had no back wall, no ceiling, no floor beyond the threshold, just a dark tunnel stretching into infinity. On the elevator panel, only one button glowed. 41st Meridian Tower only had 40 floors. The radio in Dylan's hand suddenly came to life. Static, then a voice. "Mercer! Dylan, can you hear me? Where are you?" "Mercer, I'm at the security desk, but something's wrong. The building's different. The monitors..." "You're not at the desk," Mercer cut in. "I'm looking at the desk right now. You're not here." Dylan turned back to the security monitors. They still showed his doppelganger, sitting at a desk identical to his, but now he could see Mercer in the background, talking into his radio, looking right through the thing, pretending to be Dylan. "I'm in some other version of the building," Dylan said. The monitors triggered something at 1:23, 6 seconds of static, and then, "Listen carefully," Mercer said, his voice urgent. "You're on the other side now, the place between the cameras. The monitors are just windows that work both ways." "What are you talking about? How do I get back?" "You don't understand. This has happened before. The building, it isn't just a building. It's a threshold. The architect designed it that way. 40 floors in our world. Who knows how many on the other side?" Through the monitors, Dylan watched as Mercer approached his doppelganger, studied it. The thing smiled at Mercer with Dylan's face, its movements jerky, wrong. "They replace us," Mercer continued through the radio. "Take our forms, learn our behaviors, then take our places. We've lost so many already." "How do I get back?" Dylan repeated. Mercer's voice grew softer. "You don't. No one comes back from the other side. But you can go deeper. Floor 41, that's where the others went." "What others?" "The missing staff. The ones that disappeared. They're still in the building, just not our version of it." The elevator waited, its empty shaft still yawning open. "I have to go," Mercer said suddenly. "It's looking at me. Your replacement. I think it knows I'm talking to you." In the monitor, Dylan watched as his doppelganger stood up, movements stuttering like a bad video file. It reached toward Mercer. The radio went dead. The morning shift arrived at 6 a.m. to find the night security guard at his desk. Log completed, reports filed, everything normal. "How was your night?" the day guard asked. "Quiet," the guard replied, his voice slightly flat. "Nothing to report." "You're Dylan, right?" "I don't think we've met yet." The guard smiled, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. Yes. "Dylan Reed. Nice to meet you." As the day guard settled in, he noticed something odd about the security monitors. For just a second, he thought he saw a face in the static between camera feeds, a familiar face. Watching him, the guard known as Dylan gathered his things to leave. "See you tomorrow," he said, movements slightly stiff, as if he was still learning how to use his limbs. In the reflection of the elevator doors, his face flickered for just a moment, revealing something else beneath the human exterior. Meridian Towers hiring again. Night security, $30 per hour now, no experience necessary. What they don't tell you in the job description is what happens when the cameras blink, or why the employee turnover is so high, or what waits on floor 41, watching through the monitors, watching you right now. Music box played a melody no one recognized. The family who bought it thought it was charming until their 8-year-old started having conversations with it at night. Then came the scratching sounds from inside the box when it wasn't playing. Then the missing pets. Then their daughter's voice changing when she spoke in her sleep. By the time they realized what was happening, it was far too late. The music box had already found its new home. The Harmon family found the music box at an estate sale in rural Connecticut last spring. Sarah Harmon, always drawn to vintage items, spotted it beneath a pile of old jewelry. Made of dark cherry wood with intricate brass fittings, it looked like something from another century. "How much for the music box?" she asked the woman running the sale. The elderly woman squinted at it. "That was my sister's. I didn't put that out for sale." But after some persuasion and $40, Sarah left with the music box tucked carefully in her purse. The woman's parting words were odd. "It likes children's rooms. Don't put it in a child's room." Sarah dismissed this as the ramblings of a grieving sister. The music box would look perfect on her 8-year-old daughter Emma's nightstand. The mechanism still worked perfectly. When opened, a small brass cylinder turned, its tiny pins plucking a delicate metal comb to produce a haunting melody that no one in the family recognized. Not a lullaby or classical piece, something older with strange minor key progressions that seemed to shift subtly each time it played. Emma was delighted with the gift. "It's so pretty, Mom. Can I keep it next to my bed?" The first unusual incident happened 3 nights after bringing the box home. Sarah woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of her daughter's voice. Concerned, she went to check on her. Through Emma's partially open door, Sarah saw her daughter sitting up in bed, the music box open and playing its eerie tune. Emma appeared to be talking to it. "Who are you speaking to, sweetie?" Sarah asked from the doorway. Emma looked up, startled. "The lady in the box, she tells me stories when I can't sleep." Kids and their imaginary friends, Sarah thought. She tucked Emma back in, closed the music box, and didn't give it another thought. But the conversations continued. Every night, Emma would talk to what she called the lady in the box. She began to know things she shouldn't. Old folk remedies, words and languages she'd never studied, details about places the family had never visited. "The lady says she used to live in Vienna in a big house with servants," Emma told her parents at breakfast one morning. She pronounced the city name with a perfect accent. "She says she misses her body." That was when David Harmon, Emma's father, began to feel uneasy about the music box. "Maybe we should put it away for a while," he suggested to Sarah. "Emma's getting a little too attached to it." Sarah agreed, and while Emma was at school, she moved the music box to their bedroom closet, high on a shelf. That night, the scratching began. It started as a faint sound from inside their closet, like tiny nails dragging across wood. When David opened the closet to investigate, the sound stopped. Nothing seemed disturbed. At 3 a.m., they both jolted awake to the sound of the music box's melody coming from Emma's room. Rushing in, they found her sitting cross-legged on the bed, the music box open before her. "How did you get that?" Sarah demanded. "We put it in our closet." Emma looked up with a blank expression. "I didn't get it. The lady brought it to me. She wants to stay with me." The next day, David did some research on the estate where they'd purchased the box. The home had belonged to Eleanor Winters, who had died 3 months earlier at age 92. Her sister was selling her possessions. Digging deeper, David discovered that Eleanor had never married or had children. She had been a music teacher at the local school for over 40 years. Former students described her as strict but kind, nothing unusual, until David found a small newspaper clipping from 1938. It described how a young Eleanor Winters had been the sole survivor of a house fire that killed her entire family when she was just 10 years old. The cause of the fire was never determined, but neighbors reported hearing music playing from the house just before the blaze erupted. The family cat disappeared next. They found its collar in Emma's toy chest, but the cat was gone without a trace. When questioned, Emma simply said, "The lady was hungry." Their concern growing, Sarah and David decided to remove the music box from the house, and David placed it in the trunk of his car, intending to donate it to a thrift store across town. On the drive, his car inexplicably stalled. When he popped the trunk to get his roadside emergency kit, the music box was gone. It was back on Emma's nightstand when he returned home. "This has to stop," Sarah insisted. That night, she took the music box, drove to a dumpster behind a shopping center, and threw it in. She watched as it sank beneath bags of garbage, making sure it was well buried. She barely slept that night, expecting to hear the telltale melody, but the house remained silent. Morning came, and the music box hadn't returned. Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Until Emma came down for breakfast, she moved differently, more deliberately, with an almost adult posture. When she spoke, her voice had a subtle accent that hadn't been there before. "Good morning, Mother," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Did you sleep well?" Over the next few days, Emma's behavior became increasingly strange. She stopped playing with her toys. She began wearing only dresses, scorning her usual jeans and t-shirts. She hummed that eerie melody constantly, and she insisted that her parents call her Elena. "Emma, this isn't funny," Sarah said firmly. "Stop pretending." Emma's face hardened in a way no 8-year-old's face should. "Emma is sleeping, Mother. I'm keeping her safe inside, just like I was kept safe inside the box." David and Sarah took Emma to a child psychologist who suggested their daughter was exhibiting signs of dissociative identity disorder, a condition almost unheard of in children Emma's age. She recommended a specialist. But before they could make the appointment, they woke to find Emma standing at the foot of their bed at 3 a.m., the music box cradled in her arms. It had somehow returned. "She's almost ready," Emma said in that adult voice with the strange accent. "She just needs a little more room." The next morning, Emma wouldn't wake up. The doctors at the emergency room could find nothing physically wrong with her. Her brain activity was normal, her reflexes responsive. She simply wouldn't open her eyes. As she lay in the hospital bed, connected to monitors, Sarah noticed something disturbing. Thin red scratches were appearing on Emma's arms, as if something was clawing at her from the inside. David thought to bring the music box to the hospital. "Maybe if we destroy it," he suggested desperately. The old music teacher they'd consulted was skeptical. "Music boxes like this were sometimes created as vessels," she explained, examining it carefully. "Not for music, but for binding spirits. The melody is a key, both lock and release." "How do we lock it again?" Sarah asked. "You need the full melody. What you're hearing is only half the song. Without the complete tune, destroying the box might..." She trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. David took the music box to a specialist in antique musical instruments. Using advanced audio equipment, they were able to analyze the melody and determine it was indeed incomplete. The last few measures were missing. The specialist recognized elements of the composition. This is similar to some binding hymns used in Eastern European folk traditions. These were songs believed to trap malevolent entities. Researching Eleanor Winters further, they discovered her mother had been an immigrant from Romania who claimed descent from a line of folk healers. Among her possessions, cataloged but not sold at the estate sale, was a journal written in Romanian. With the help of a translator, they learned the truth. The music box had been in Eleanor's family for generations. It contained something her ancestors had trapped long ago, something that had escaped once before in 1938, resulting in the fire that killed Eleanor's family. Eleanor had managed to partially bind it again, but couldn't complete the melody. For decades, she kept it contained through sheer will, becoming its jailer, until her death released it once more. The journal's final pages contained musical notation, the complete binding melody. Racing back to the hospital, David and Sarah found Emma's condition deteriorating. The scratches had spread across her body, and her face occasionally contorted in expressions no child would make. They placed the music box on the bed beside her and used a small tool to carefully adjust the pins on the cylinder according to the notations in the journal. It was delicate work, but finally, the mechanism was modified. With trembling hands, Sarah opened the box. The melody began, similar to what they'd heard before, but with new notes that resolved the haunting progression. As the complete tune played, Emma's body went rigid. Her back arched off the bed, and a terrible scream came from her throat. Not a child's scream, but something ancient and full of rage. From her mouth came a dark mist that swirled and seemed to fight against an invisible pull. As the melody reached its final notes, the mist was drawn inexorably toward the music box, spiraling into it like water down a drain. The box snapped shut on its own. Emma collapsed back onto the bed, her eyes flying open. "Mom? Dad?" Her voice was her own again. "I had the worst dream." The Harmons took the music box to a specialist in occult objects. It's now sealed in lead and stored in a secure location. Emma has no memory of her time as Eleanor, but she still sometimes hums fragments of the melody in her sleep. Last week, Sarah received a letter from the elderly woman who sold them the music box. It contained just 3 lines. "It won't stay locked forever. It's gotten out before. Next time, it won't want a child." Sarah keeps the letter hidden, but sometimes late at night she swears she can hear faint scratching coming from inside the walls, like tiny fingernails looking for a way out.